Okay, good morning. You've all heard the term about silence is golden. I'd like to talk about that today. So, in silence, boundaries disappear, and we have all the time in the world. A one-day retreat like today can be either an eternity or a day too short to do anything. It depends on one's attitude when sitting. Staying present can create spaciousness, or one can dream the time away. To begin a meditation with the right attitude, we check our egos at the door and sit with no expectations. Which way do you think is the best way for a zaznkai? A retreat is a good time to put usual habits on hold. We recognize that when we follow the schedule and it doesn't include habits, good or bad, sometimes it's just a feeling of irritation when we don't have them and when time does not include them. But it does make us aware of what they are for a change eventually. We leave habits at the door when we enter the zendo, and we can pick them up at the door again when we leave, if we really want to continue that way. Leaving habits at the door pushes us to do what we don't usually do and not do what we usually do. Habits allow us to coast in life awake, but really asleep, and leave us with a lot of unused space if we don't have them that we're not used to dealing with. Habits can be helpful until we follow a schedule that doesn't include them. So leaving habits at the door makes space for us to do something different, like do what we don't usually do and not do what we usually do. Without habits, we learn a physical, mental, and emotional foreign language of a new way of living. The new way includes bowing and chanting, and all of this may feel unnatural because it's new and it's unexplored. That can seem exciting at first, but chanting a physical, mental, and emotional foreign language and bowing and chanting will take us into a whole new territory and a lot of new experiences. They feel unnatural because they're new, like a path that we've never been on, and we don't know where we're going. But we do it because even more than teachers' words, we believe that following the process may cause something wonderful to happen to us or around us. Eventually, we have to verify for ourselves that we're on the right path. Eventually, we have to verify for ourselves that we are on the right path. But until we do that, we tend to waffle back and forth about merits or lack of them. But when outside reality somehow verifies our inside reality, then it's good to go. It's time to make an effort to change what needs changing, and a retreat is like doing an inventory and a good time to begin that. It's a good time to step out of your usual mental framework. You might ask, since words are a part of our natural being, why should we keep quiet? Is not that unnatural? And it is at first. But whenever we change something that we're accustomed to doing, it often feels wrong at first. Silence, when maintained for a time, however, begins to feel more natural than speech. And when words are used sparsely, we tend to pay more attention to them. We even consider for ourselves saying them more carefully. Think how much you talk every day. Think how often you use words to engage others only for entertainment, or to empty out emotions, or to elicit reactions. Think how often you jump from topic to topic without consideration of what you set in motion. Think how hungry you are for information from outside. You already know what you can do with words in an ordinary setting, but you do not know what words look and sound like from a perspective of silence. In silence, we study our interior. In silence, we study words as well as stillness. And we study noise and clamor as well as peacefulness, but we study them from a different perspective. We rearrange our interior in a different way. In silence, we go beyond self-nature and we become aware. In silence, we become more aware of self-nature, and the silence is not the silence of no sound. Because first we have to get to know speech silence. In Japan, the word for real true silence is called jaku, which means a profound silence beyond silence. It means a silence which deals with emptiness as well as sound. Chanting is one of the few times we use word in a retreat other than in a private interview. But in a retreat, words are not used for entertainment or unnecessary information or to fill in awkward spaces or for relationships or even just to let off steam. In a retreat, a simple bow replaces words, and the light bow lets body carry the relationship. So body begins to speak instead of mouth. Body and mind work together as if you were still on the cushion doing zazen. And when body, speech, and mind carry the relationship, you have a jackpot like 3 gold bars in a slot machine. But the jackpot you get is a quiet mind and body. Yet you are in motion, drinking tea, eating a cookie, and helping outside, or just waiting for meditation. With a quiet mind, you're always composed and attentive, and that is jackpot. With words, we learn to be more concise. In a retreat, we learn to use words and body together to reveal Buddha nature through self-nature. In the private interview, words become a way to freedom from a self rather than further entanglement. Leaving egos and habits at the door when we enter the meditation room guarantees we will not use words to hide behind self-nature, but instead to open Buddha nature. Consider that when we leave our ego at the door, we enter without baggage, and that means to enter without past history, without future plans, with empty hands, and with nothing but our self-nature. We enter in a vulnerable state, an amazing space where miracles can happen. We start to do what we do not usually do and stop doing what we usually do. We stand on our own ground, however unclear it is. That ineffable space where we become unshakable in the face of obstacles and we embrace everyone. Silence is not something we contrive to bring about. The chattering in our heads is more like a wheel that rolls down an incline and stops at the bottom, because without an incline, there is no more turning. It just flops at the bottom, lies still. We may have begun the thoughts, but once begun, they turn on their own momentum and absorb our attention until we step back and let them go. Silence begins when we stay present and focus on breathing without focusing on the chattering mind. The thoughts eventually will calm down and the mind will become quiet. The wheel rolls to the bottom, stops with no more incline. And the incline is the desire we have to fill the space with words. We have to observe that desire and let it go. We have to sit with patience. We've gotten into the desire to talk so often that it feels natural to talk and unnatural to be silent. We must give up this topsy-turvy world of feeling that desire to speak is necessary and silence is a problem. We have to outrate our busy mind, so do not give up if you have an unusually active mind when you sit. Instead, focus on your breath with determination. Take your focus away from thoughts so that the turning wheel will come to an end. Let the desire to talk fall away and bring the wheel to a halt. Patience and silence come to your aid, but talking speeds up thoughts. In a retreat, we feel better afterwards because silence has laid the groundwork for peace of mind later. But a busy mind begins again with the gentlest of pushes from us with unnecessary talking when we return to daily life. Sometimes when we count breaths for 2 or 3 sittings, we are not aware of its calming influence. We notice it later when we react calmly to something. We may feel better after a retreat, but then we tend to go back to old habits. We end up thinking nothing has changed, but that's a mistake because in a retreat, once we begin rearranging our interior, even old habits, we begin a journey of change that won't be stopped. And now I'd like to give you a challenge. How many days can you last without loose talk before you give in and talk unnecessarily after the zaznkai? And watch your mind quiet down, surprisingly so. Do you have any questions?
I'll start.
Yes.
Okay.
I remember when we did the 5 days of Sheen before my zaznkai ceremony, and it was strange that when I left, I never experienced my brain being that quiet.
Yeah.
And the piece that there was no need for internal dialogue. But by the time I got home, driving on the freeway, the internal dialogue came back. Okay, those idiots on the road and stuff, and it all came back. I find that I almost dread coming to zaznankais because of the silence.
But why don't you try after the zaznkai to deliberately limit any talk whatsoever unless it's really needed?
Well, that's the thing I'm learning from this.
And see what happens. See how long that quiet maintains itself.
I'm learning that, like today, it's like when I go home, I find I don't need to talk. Of course, I live by myself, there's somebody to talk to. But it kind of teaches me that silence as much as talking is.
Well, it can be, but watch it for a little bit and watch that it does tend to quiet down unless you pick it up, unless you turn the wheel yourself a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Just watch yourself doing it, and you do it by deliberately thinking about something you have to do and putting your mind on a thinking mind. So take your attention off the thinking mind for as long as you can after the zaznkai is finished, and see if like a day or two goes longer than usual without the raging mind starting up again.
Thank you.
Whenever that happens, just sit back, take some deep breaths, and watch it roll down the hill and hopefully end. And then try to keep it that way by not deliberately thinking about plans or things you have to do or things that are irritating you or something. Whatever it is, thinking can be like talking, especially if you live alone. Thinking becomes another method of talking. I know that if you're living in a quiet place and you don't tend to talk so much, that your thinking can take on the same role.
Or do as I do. I just talk to myself out loud because I know there's nobody watching me. Thank you.
Okay, but try to keep your finger off the wheel. Just a tiny little tap will turn it.
Anyone else?
Okay.
Sandy? Huh? Who had their hand up first? Sandy or Joel?
Yeah, Sandy can go. I can go.
Sandy, go while I can hear you.
Thank you, Jane, for that talk. I'm muted. No. I wanted to let you know that, your talk brought up a lot of things from, especially when I was first starting. And as much as when I came to sit zazen, I had all this crazy monkey mind and it was annoying. And it gave me a chance to realize that I don't have to make friends with all these things, all the thoughts coming through my head. I think that was the problem. I was grasping onto the thoughts. And so I finally was able to, during during sitting, was to uh, just look at them and don't attach any emotion to the thoughts and not bring them into my life and make them important. And it really helped to slow down the thoughts. But they still come back, the thoughts
Yeah.
come back, but I now can look at them a little more dispassionately and realize that a lot of it's just like the mind is trying to trick you and grab onto you and I'll be your friend for this short period of time if you listen to my thought, that kind of thing. It's like you're right. If you lived alone, your thoughts could become your best friend if you have no one to talk to.
But
So
that's an illusion. Your thoughts
I
are
know,
temporary, very temporary, and they come in and just think of them as different colors coming into your life,
right?
depending on how you're feeling. And they're just
Yeah, they're,
temporary for that time.
yeah, they're diversions that
Yeah,
the mind is trying to move you in one way or the other. To give you these thoughts that you start thinking are real, and they're not really based in reality, most of them. I mean, it's one thing to think, oh, the house is on fire. That's a reality if it's smoking and there's flames. But it's another thing, to have these odd, strange thoughts just floating through that if you really look at them, they're not based in reality.
yeah.
They might serve a function, but yeah. So it was interesting hearing your talk about that.
I'm glad you got some of it.
Yeah, I did. I did have my own microphone muted. That's why I couldn't hear you. But
Oh,
thank you, whoever gave me a
you're
hint.
okay. Joel?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Jane. That was really beautiful. Great to be back here. Yeah, it was very interesting because I'm coming off, for various reasons, a month where I've been really quite solitary. It's not been a deliberately silent retreat, but there was no one here to talk to particularly. And it was good. I mean, it's not that thoughts didn't arise, but I said, I don't know, more than usual. I was able to say, okay, you know, I heard you. Like, now I'm doing my thing. They became less powerful and dominating, you know, like I'd have thought, and then I would have something to do, and I did it, and the thought was gone. And so that was very interesting, you know. You can't live like that all the time, but it was encouraging in terms of this, that it is possible to be quieter.
Yeah, it is possible, and we don't realize how much we stir up the thinking when it starts slowing down.
Exactly. I mean, we think and then we have a reaction to the thought, and it's possible sometimes to have a thought and say, okay, I'm just not going to take you up right now. It's nice to
Yeah,
be.
let it roll down to the bottom of the hill and sit there.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. It doesn't always happen, of course, but it's kind of interesting to see that it's possible for that to happen, to kind of set your intention to having, letting it go in less,
Mhm.
it's something, well, not fire in the house is an extreme example, but there might be something that you have to pay some degree of attention to, but most of the time it's just random stuff that arises.
Yeah, and you can just watch it rather than focusing on it.
Exactly. You watch it and say, okay. So I don't know, it's interesting because I haven't experienced that very much. Um, and sometimes, towards the end of a long session, I can get in a little of that state sometimes, but this was interesting to realize like I wasn't doing a long session. I was sitting every day and doing my thing, but it was possible to more just let go and return to the task at hand, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate your talk today. I'm in favor
Okay,
of
thank you,
silence.
Joe. Rachel.
Mike,
Opposite problem. Thank you, Peter. Um, and thank you, Jay. Didn't hear that either. Not to be contrary, but I don't know that I find being with other people the predominant um, controller in terms of thinking. It, I lived alone a long time, and I've lived with someone for a long time, and I find it easier to be silent when I'm on my own. Um, when I am with other people, my thoughts actually fire more. Do you know what I mean? It's as though I can have a dialogue all by myself, regardless of who else is in the room. And it's much easier, or I mean, I don't even think of it. I really can find myself being very quiet, on my own. And the other thing is, I remember long ago, but there was a musician, jazz musician, who used to come to the Zendo Joko. And I remember he said once that he thought he cheated because he thought in terms of music. I mean, in other words, he could sit there and his mind would go ripping, and he said, no, no words. And I just really got a kick out of that. I still remember it. But at any rate, I just wanted to say that to me, with other people alone, that no longer seems there are triggers in the sense of if I'm startled, my mind will want to figure it out. But honestly, it's the state of my own mind that turns the on off switch, or like those lights that dim,
Yeah.
dim till it's almost dark. Um, that's, I'd say, more of a sensation that I would relate to. Thank you, Jane, for a wonderful talk.
You're welcome. Any more other questions? Who's the light over there?
Mark,
Mark?
Hi, Jane.
Hi.
Yeah, I could just see your eyes, that little
There you are. I see you.
separation of, okay, so, in regular society, people who don't think are considered inept or dunces, or there's something wrong with them,
Who don't think?
who don't think,
Oh,
who want to have no thoughts.
we're not
It's
trying to
kind
have
of-
no thoughts.
Yes, we're trying the opposite. We're kind of swimming upstream, I think. And I find I'm like Mike, is that I'm by myself, and before I know it, I'm talking to myself. And I'm like the jazz musician. I'll start thinking music, and the music. And is that fair when I'm sitting meditating? Is that fair if I have a song going through my head?
I think that's still activity.
Right. So it's funny. These little the way to get involved, your mind is infinitely a prankster.
On the other hand, I think sometimes the song is trying to tell you something, so I look to see what it's saying first, and then take your attention off of it, so you don't spend time on it.
Yeah, I don't have nagging songs. My songs, once I recognize it, I go, oh, I'm sitting, this probably isn't fair, and it kind of disappears.
Well, like sometimes you might be sitting and your head might be singing, I'm sitting on top of the world.
Oh, yeah, right, sure. If it's expressing some emotion.
Yeah, and then
that's
then you
great.
just stop thinking about it or don't focus on it.
Yeah, I seem to be. It's not an annoyance. Like I can't stop a song. I know people that can't stop a song. I just have a problem with, my mind will find something else to dwell on or annoy me with or not. But thank you, Jane. It was a wonderful talk.
You're welcome. Yeah, my sister was telling me sometimes when she'd be sitting, her mind would start singing, when the red robin comes up. She said that was one that drove her crazy. But I think it's not just, but it is a question of like focusing on what isn't really necessary. Is that
Donna
like,
Buell.
huh?
Donna Buell.
Oh. Anyway, so thank you for your questions, but the point I was trying to make is that letting your thinking mind come to a halt or letting your thinking mind slow down isn't true silence, but it is one of the ways towards it. If you start to see, how noisy thoughts can be and how noisy your mind really is, it's a shock when you realize that your mind is literally babbling all the time, and that's really hard. So that was my point. So,
If I
but
can add-
but half of that is the focus you're putting on it too. That left to itself, your mind will slow down. And if we stop being impatient about it, we can experience a mind that slows down.
I just wanted to say real quick in relation to what Rachel said. Somebody told me, I heard this said, you can't have music without the silence between the notes.
That's interesting, yeah.
So the silence plays as much an important role as the note does, and in our thinking, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, the silence kind of is part of the thinking process, so you actually try to stop thinking, which is crazy, but if you just kind of absorb the silence for a little while, it's.
Yeah, just let the thinking mind do its thing. That's what it does. And just let it do it till there's no focus on it, and it will slow down. Okay.
Sandy.
Sandy? There you are. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that there are times during the day when I'll like sit down in my recliner and look out the window. I have a lot of like greenery out there, almost like a forest. And I find my mind will go still. And it's got to be one of the nicest feelings internally. It's like total peace. Uh, it's amazing when I can actually feel and see my mind slow down and still. Uh, it's like a place I always want to go, but I know I don't want to disappear into it either.
And
So
nobody disappears from that. You won't disappear. You
I
don't have
guess,
to worry about that.
yeah,
But
that's true. It's always going to be,
just not focusing. Yeah. Just not putting your
yeah, not
attention
focused.
on the way your mind works will give it some peace. And the fact that you practice breathing through a zaznkai, afterwards, the feeling of comfort that you have inside is from that effort. And so you don't need to think about that so much either. Just experience it for a while and watch your hand on the wheel. Just Your hand
Thank you,
is that
Jane.
desire to fill the space to prove, I
Of course,
think, yeah, anyway. Thank you all for
it's true.
listening.
Mitch.
Thank you.
Mitch? Where's Mitch?
Okay. So I was reluctant to bring this up, but I don't have an answer for my own question. So this is a cup, right?
Yes?
So with all the dialects and languages in the world, there must be hundreds of words for cup, right?
Yeah,
But cup is
Uh-huh.
it's just a concept, right?
yes,
Something we drink out of.
yeah.
So if we don't use the word, we have the concept. How can we do we calm the concept? Can we do this reductionist thing, getting past words, but we have a concept without words, right?
That might be hard.
And then I mean, so are we supposed to we're supposed to calm the concepts as much as calm the words?
No, I think the concepts will just calm themselves if we aren't focusing on words. I mean, the words and the concepts are the same thing to us. And so just calming the whole thinking mind will calm that too. You don't have to think about concepts so much. It is true that the cup is a concept. It's also, the object we drink tea or water from. But
Because
you don't have to concern yourself with the differences of the concepts. All you have to do is just let your mind know it's okay to not think about it. It's okay to use the cup and without thinking even the word cup. Just if you have to say to somebody, I'd like a cup of coffee, that's about it. But other than that, it's okay to think about it. It's not okay to spend all your time considering whether to use a concept or not, because then you're just spinning the wheel.
thank you.
Is that okay?
Yeah, yes, thank you.
If you want to discuss that further anytime, feel free.
It's because I mean, for me, across all of the dialects and languages, because we're all the same, the concept's all the same across all the people without the words. So that's
Yeah.
it seems to be a hierarchy of some sort
Yeah, but we don't have
between
to
concepts to words to concepts and then a quiet mind.
yeah, all of that is outside of a quiet mind. It's not necessary to think about other people's ideas and concepts. It's only necessary to stay with yourself. When you want to quiet your mind, you're the only one that matters in that case. You don't have to consider other people's use of concepts, only yourself and your thinking mind.
That's what I tell Deborah all the time. I'm the only one that I have to. Never mind.
I don't mean in everything. I don't mean in everything, but where your thinking mind is concerned, you're the only one that can calm it. And tell Deborah hello.
Thank you, Jane.
You're welcome.
Yes, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Jane, for the wonderful talk.
You're welcome. This is Mark Fraser talking.
Yeah, so one thing I think about is, I'll have a thought in my head and I'll be able to let the thought go, and then a feeling will come up. Like I wonder about emotions kind of driving thoughts. So sometimes I'll have a thought, I'll let it go, and then I'll maybe feel some sadness or something. I can let myself feel the sadness, and then I'll be able to go to that quiet place.
Yeah,
So-
that's fine. The feelings are temporary like thoughts are. And so when they come up, you can let those go as well. They're a little harder because you have a physical reaction as well as a thought and a feeling. So, but you can let that go too. That's as temporary as words are in your mind. They come and go as well.
That was all I had.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. It's good to hear. I'm sorry we don't have everybody on the camera today, but today we have 4 people here extra. And Beth,
5, yeah. Yeah, there were 7 of us here.
yeah, it's so nice that Zendo almost feels full,
Just like the old times.
just like the old days, yes.
Mitch, is your hand up again or just left up there?
Do you have a question
No, it didn't. Okay, thank
or
you.
comment?
Yeah, thank you, everyone.